What's going on, y'all? I know it's been a minute, but I'm back. It's your boy, Tone Diesel, G Talk 2020. We got Dr. Danielle Kendricks here in the flesh. We working on getting her in the actual studio, but it's coming soon. She got a lot of stuff going on, and I'm gonna let her introduce herself, and then later on, I will tell you guys where I've been because I've kind of disappeared. This is my first episode back since the passing of my co-host. So this is a special episode for the both of us. So go ahead, Danny. You got the flow.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. My name is Dr. Danielle Kendricks. I am from Chicago. I recently obtained my doctoral degree last year, and I focused my research on understanding the relationship between Black Chicago youth and Chicago drill music. Very interesting topic. A lot of people were very curious about why I would choose to select such a topic. And I felt that that topic really represented my community as well as young people here in the city of Chicago. I have a ton of experience working with young adults and families and communities across Chicago. I've done a lot of work in the nonprofit sector. I've worked with youth in care or wards of the state.
Yep.
I've worked in different residential types of facilities as well as school-based types of programs. And just throughout all of my experiences, I just have become more interested in being able to give a voice to young people, as particularly young people that are often overlooked. The people that are out here doing a lot of stuff that happens, in the city, a lot of times don't have a voice to be able to speak to why they are engaged in some of those behaviors. And so I really wanted to focus on that population. And then for people that are not necessarily engaged in street behavior, there are other people that still connect with that type of behavior for one reason or another, whether it be through music, through people that they have friendships, relationships with, through loss, grief. So a lot of things are happening with our young people in the city. And so I focused on drill music because I felt like that would really capture the essence of what was happening with the younger generation in our community. So that's who I am. And I'm just here to chop it up today and just have a conversation to get into it.
Oh, for sure. That's dope. And congratulations again, your doctorate. So you chose to use Chicago drill music for your thesis?
Yep. So to complete my doctoral research, I, decided that I wanted to focus on drill music. And it was like at right when the pandemic hit, it was time for me to do my dissertation. And I knew that I wanted to do it on something meaningful, something that was, would be able to speak to Chicago, the issues happening in Chicago. And just after following, I listen to a lot of rap. I grew up in the hip hop area,
Right.
like I'm a rap girl. I'm always a fan of Chicago music. And just after kind of looking deeper into the issues happening within the different neighborhoods with the various gangs, how that ties over to drill music and social media, I decided to focus on drill music as my topic.
That's wonderful. That's awesome, man. For real. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, man. We need more of us to represent us and to figure us out and to not be the statistics that other folks are coming with and from an outside point of view. And that goes for sure. And that brings us to my next topic. You say you work with youth in care. I work with youth in care also. Um, DCFS, a lot of different other facilities. Do you feel that the gangs or gang culture now and the fact that the homes aren't as strong as they once were when we were coming up, do you feel that those are influencing the music also?
Oh, absolutely. Even, from my generation, gang culture has always had a very strong hold in Chicago, period. It's no denying it. People can act like, they might want to pretend,
Yeah.
but gang culture is steeped in Chicago history. I mean, even if we go back to the days of Al Capone, right? But
Right.
people admire and respect Al Capone, but then they don't want to talk about the history of the GDs and the BDs and the vice lords, and but it's all a part of it. And so when you look at what happened after the projects got torn down, you start to see these disjointed gangs and different gang factions, coming into the communities. And where we are today is a direct result of what happened when the projects were taken down and demolished. And there wasn't really a plan for housing, and there wasn't a plan to get resources to those families, to those single mother headed households
Yeah.
that we're living in Cabrini Green and the Robert Taylor homes and all the other high rises that got torn down. And so all of these years later, we are continuing to see kind of the ramifications of some of that government policy that happened in Chicago.
Yeah, I feel that. And that brings me up to a question that you were talking. I was thinking, um, gang culture, Chicago, buildings torn down. Now you got disbursements. Now you got West Side gangs and the South Side gangs that were rivals now next door to each other. Do you think the cutting off the head of the snakes mentality that the government did in the 90s and the 2000s kind of backfired on them, and now because there is no hierarchy, no gang structure, that's part of the reason that the crime is up too?
Absolutely, absolutely. And in my dissertation, I talk about that. So as a part of my dissertation, I did have to complete research. So I had participants, that I was able to ask them questions and do in-depth interviews with them and to get feedback. And some of the feedback that they gave me is that there is no gang, there is no hierarchy. So if we look back into the 90s and the law enforcement's initiative was called Operation Headache, and that was that kind of major targeting of the heads of the gangs to be able to take those people out in hopes that it would eliminate gangs altogether. But what ended up happening is that you end up creating all of these gang factions because at that moment when all of the gang heads were in prison or taken off the streets, you also have this, demolition of the projects kind of happening around the same time.
Concurrently going on.
Concur, exactly. So you have these two major things, I'm assuming with the hope that, the gangs would just dismember altogether, but that's not what happened. What happened is that, we started to see Chicago developing what they call the Black Belt. And that's the neighborhoods in the west and south side of Chicago that were specifically limited areas to where Black people could live. Those are those areas that when the projects were torn down, Black people were able to get housing in those areas. There were hundreds of thousands of families that were displaced as a result of the demolition of the projects. And there just honestly was not enough housing and there was not enough planning put into place. So you start to see, these individuals from different gangs living on the same block, and traditional rival gangs, in the housing projects now are living on the same block together with no structure. There's no big homie. A lot of
Mhm.
my participants talked about having big homies, and there is no big homie. And even so, to the point today where even if there were individuals in place that would kind of call the shots, a lot of young people wouldn't even listen to it. Like they haven't been brought up in that structure to
Right.
have to listen to an individual or get approval to engage in certain types of things. So that completely backfired, as a result of the demolition of the projects and just the lack of resources overall for those families.
Absolutely. I couldn't say it better. And it's funny because as Chicagoans, we have these conversations amongst ourselves, but talking to a sister and a doctor in this field, it kind of makes it seem like we knew what we were talking about. And, we kind of seen it happen. And it's kind of there goes the neighborhood mentality, like going back to piggyback what you're saying about the youth not listening to leaders. I do a lot of community work, mentoring. I work at a, mental hospital, uh, so I see it all the time. I hear him gang banging. I see him gang banging, and then me and a couple of older brothers, we try to talk to him, and talking about structure and how you had to go to school and how you had to have good grades and you couldn't be on the block during school hours, and if what would happen if you were caught, you know, and what the big homies would do. And they'll just laugh and be like, man, I wish a nigga would try to touch me. Or not even to go into like certain gangs and certain situations, but it was a gang leader who was released from jail. And then he called a gang meeting and he basically was trying to restructure, bring it back together with something that like people with common sense or older people, like even though gangs are bad, at least grandma's not getting shot. If somebody will get shot, it's gonna be the thugs. You know what I mean? Talking about going back to paying dues, for lawyer fees, because that's the whole thing. Like they don't understand why, because they never had to do it. So when you tell them, like, hey, bro, if you go do it right way, like the mob. They have money for lawyers. So that means they pay dues. If they make $1,000 today, they're going to give 200 of that thousand. But to them, nah, this all my money. And that's when you see it's all gang gang until when you go into a collective, they don't have that collective mentality. They don't want the collective mentality. And if you try to offer it to them, they go kill you.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of the older guys getting out the joint that could come back in, or even the older guys that are out that have the credibility of the streets to say like, "Hey, shorty," they're like, "Man, I'm got a whole wife and kids. They killing niggas just for saying, hey, don't do that." Like
Hmm.
we even so, and I think that's what it is. And I think the drill music just magnified what was a local problem into a citywide problem because gangs are citywide. Everybody got a cousin, everybody got a brother, everybody got to go to school with somebody, everybody knows somebody. And that's what I realized also that as I'm getting these kids in and out the mental hospital and different facilities, these are the ones that are committing the crimes.
Hmm.
These are the ones that have like bipolar or ADHD or just broken homes. Some of them, like it was a guy, he was just stealing cars just for the thrill of it. And then there's other guys, they stealing cars because they using it for hits. And it's kind of hard to pinpoint like why these kids are doing the crimes. The common denominator, and which is what's kind of put drill in a bad viewpoint, is they all in gangs. They all disrespecting other gangs. And just like the YSL case, they're all pretty much spelling out the things that they're doing.
Hmm.
But what do you think in drill community could change that? Do you think somebody could come in and be the voice of the drill and say, hey, we gonna still make this gangster music, but we just gonna make gangster music. We not gonna say, I'm coming down this block, I'm not gonna kill this person, we not smoking this person. Do you think Chicago drill will ever just evolve into just gangster music? Or you think this is the genre and this is how it's gonna be?
Um, that's a good question. Unfortunately, I think that there are always going to be aspects of Chicago drill music that have that, that violent, retaliatory messaging. And
Hmm.
that's unfortunate. I would hope that at some point, the music could evolve. But I think that there has to be we have to give young people a voice. Like I feel like drill is discredited, which is the reason why I wanted to do my research on drill, because everybody kind of dismisses drill artists and their experiences as just thugs and gangbangers. But if you really listen to the music, you listen to the lyrics, you listen to the things, the repetitive messaging over and over again about growing up in poverty, about the lack of opportunity, about not being able to go to school, about experiencing death, how all of those things combine and create mental health issues. We hear this over and over and over and over and over again. Yet, when it comes to addressing those core issues of what young people are experiencing, oftentimes they get dismissed, especially as young Black kids. We dismiss people's experiences. And so like drill music is this way to kind of validate those experiences, to say, hey, it's real. And even if it's somebody else who, who are ops, who from another neighborhood, who's from wherever, they still are going through the exact same things. And that's the reason why they have been able to connect in this like unified messaging that's happening in the music. And so I think that, there so many messages that young people get as soon as they walk out the door about the disinvestment in their communities, the disinvestment in their schools, and just overall disregard for their lives. I think that we have to start to have these conversations with young people, teach them how to communicate, teach them how to be okay with being vulnerable and expressing their feelings, because they do it through the music. Like we hear it in drill music, it just come off a different way.
For sure.
And so I do think that there are always going to be artists, and there's always going to be an audience that is interested in, that retaliatory, when I see you with song, unfortunately. But I do think that, there are some benefits, and there are some people that are popular artists that could start to, do more to focus on artist development, to talk about mental health, to really understand the music business. And a lot of artists, have, been preyed on, I hate to say, by some of these large record labels, because they come grab the kids out the hood, get them this hefty record deal, which may not be beneficial for them, and they still got to engage in all of this street level activity and live in Chicago. And we know how that story ends. And so I think that there are some things that we can do to better educate young people. And I also look at just like the savviness of young people even creating drill music. Like they're doing this on smartphones. They start creating this on smartphones with free apps. You know what I mean? So like, how can we start to leverage those skills of young people into lucrative, career opportunities and development opportunities that they can take to do different things? Like, you don't always have to be the artist toting the gun in front of the camera. There are other things that you can do. There are other transferable skills. And like, how do we start to instill value in young people and not like continue to demonize them? Is really, really, really my focus, and really what I want to get the word out about, and just give young people a voice to be seen as something different. Like I think our young people are hurting, like we see it. They're hurting. Our communities are hurting, and how do we start to come together to have this healing conversation? Because that has not happened. There's a lot that needs to be processed and dealt with. And I think that there are some artists that are in positions where we could start having to see some of these conversations, but it's not going to be an easy, quick fix. It's going to be a process that is going to take commitment and just continuing to unpack the layers of what's happening with our young people and with our communities.
Correct. I feel that. And that's why I think you pretty much summed up why I like G Herbo. Because he's not just making we sliding on niggas. He's saying how he's feeling. You like the whole PTSD album,
Mm-hmm.
that pretty much summed it up.
Yeah.
A lot of these kids out here really have PTSD, really, because I'm in my 30s. So even now in my 30s, and if you ask somebody that's older than 30, like, boy, you young as hell. So, I'm like, man, I've lost friends and family through things. And I'm just like, man, that's crazy. And then you talk to an older person and they'll tell you like, and so I can imagine what it's like being 14, 15, 13, especially in G Herbo's case, losing as many people as
Mhm.
he did, he's lost.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that too, the people who they're losing. And then I feel that the eventually, and maybe I say another 5 years, drill music would just evolve and it would just be music because just like with the whole 90s gangster movement, rowdy, it was raunchy, it was, you know, national attention seeking, but people eventually got the message. And then I think us being in Chicago and being like, I don't know, I'm not to sound biased, but we like a dope ass city. And a lot of people look at us and now they got the New York drill and the London drill. And I think eventually we're gonna move past the hurt and just focus on music. But I think right now we're just still in a state of trying to get on. Like everybody's still trying to get on. And I think once we get out, we'll be all right.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I agree. I think that, eventually, I mean, we start to see drill music become a more commercialized form of rap than it was from,
Chief Keef and Louis.
looking at Chief Keef in his grandma living room.
Yeah, yeah. He
It
definitely
started.
the prototype of drill.
Right. So it's definitely started to become more commercialized for sure. I do agree, with your statement that eventually, it's just gonna become just rap, similar to the way that gangster music was, and everybody was up in arms about, gangster music. Um, but I do think that, we are going to continue to see with social media, with, the the deep interconnection of gang culture in Chicago neighborhoods, with music being so popular and with smart devices, like we're gonna continue to see that blend. And so, I think, it's just gonna become a lot more normalized, like I hear them play GDs in the dope everywhere.
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 I
Not
was
even
at
Chicago. It's just like
Not
it's a
even Chicago. I was at a Dallas Cowboys game, and I don't know if it was because it was the Bears versus you know what I mean, but they was playing GDs at the game, GDs in the dough at the game.
yeah.
And it's funny just seeing like white people or any race, not even throwing up GD, but just throwing their hands up like, yeah,
Right. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you don't know what you doing, do you?
You're
Like,
right. Like you have no idea, none at all. But I mean, again, it goes back to that like commercialization
mhm.
and just normalizing. Like it's crazy for me. It's crazy to see people, rapping GDs in the dough because
Yeah.
I know what it mean. I grew up in Jeffrey Manor. Okay, so I know.
AMG, AMG's finest.
Right. I know what time it is. So Um, but again, I think it just speaks to that normalization of just like gang culture being very present in Chicago. The influence that Chicago rap and Chicago drill is having on the music industry overall. And there has to be some different type of investments into Chicago youth, into Chicago neighborhoods and communities for us to start to see a curve and you know, things spilling from a song. We know it don't even take a day for something to
Mhm.
spill from a song to a crime scene or and
And then a tweet, and it's
yes, that's it. So, we got a lot of work to do with
yeah,
our young people, particularly around mental health and also around processing grief and loss, which I think is often not talked about a lot. Young people being able to process grief and loss, especially like you said, in G Herbo's case, you're talking about losing like double-digit people
Yeah,
to, at a very young age. Like, what's the impact of that?
yeah. Two things before we go into the HBO and everything else. We touched on the PTSD. We touched on the kids and how they feeling. But do you feel that the kids, well, I'm gonna just say the youth and care that I've came across, they come in hurting, they come in mad, they come in angry. A lot of, and like I'm saying, this is not all because I don't know all the killers, but the ones I've came across, broken homes. They got a mom, they got a grandma, they got a dad. They all may not be in the same household, or they may have two out of the three, or maybe just grandma, no mom and dad, period. But they all angry, they all hurting, they all feel like they're in it by themselves, which is life. They feel like they're in life by themselves, and only people that really got them is the gang. Do you feel that that pushes the button of like us over anything because the lack of social, financial, and educational environment makes it feel like this is all they know, this is all they want to know? Or do you think it's just kids being young and ignorant, not realizing it's more than this?
No, I don't think that, um, them not thinking. I think that young people need to be exposed to more.
No.
They need to be able to see, that representation is so important. It's so important to be able to see somebody who looks like doing different things. I can't tell you how many times, how you and I both know, how many people aspire to grow up and go to the NBA. Like, that was the dream. It was the NBA, selling
NFL.
drugs, robbing. It was pimping at one point in time. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah.
these are
I
these
had a
are
little bit I wanted to be a pimp when I was a child.
right. Like,
It's
these
like,
are unfortunately like the examples of success. It hurt my heart working with young people to hear that they had never been downtown.
yeah,
Young people in Chicago
yeah,
never been downtown. Not only had they never been downtown, you can see downtown.
yeah,
It's like this place that you don't belong.
yeah.
Um,
You can see it, but you can't touch it.
you see it, but you can't touch it. And even if you can't touch it, you don't belong there. It's
Yeah.
not for you. When I was doing my research, I talked about Chicago as being like the tale of two cities. Like, it's this beautiful place for some people, and for other people, it's like a trap. And
Mm-hmm.
when I was doing my presentation, I found an image of the projects before they got torn down with it gated up, and you can see downtown, beautiful from the projects.
Yeah.
And so how have we instilled in young people those messages that you don't belong? This beautiful, magnificent mall and Gold Coast is not for you. Young people need to feel comfortable being able to go downtown,
Mm.
being able to be, exposed to different career paths, and to feel comfortable going into Willis Tower or whatever they call it now, to feel like this is a place that I belong, this is my city.
Yeah.
And that there are just opportunities like for them. What's to do in the neighborhood? It's nothing to do. Everything
Yeah.
closed down. Everything closed down.
Yeah.
It's nothing to
Yeah.
do.
And that's when the violence start, cause let's get into trouble. There ain't nothing to do. Let's make something.
Let's make something to do. And then it's gonna spill over into other communities, because
Mhm.
you may think that it's isolated to the south and west side, but it's only a matter of time before it spills over. And young people are resentful of the fact that, how come these people get to live this good, nice life, and I got to be confined to my neighborhood and nothing. And so you do have people that are down there to do not so good things, and to threaten everybody's safety. And so, how do we change course, and how do we continue to have these conversations and bring young people's voices, to the table is really my focus, and really specifically why I wanted to talk about drill music.
Yeah. Can you tell us about your upbringing in Jeffrey Manor? How was that for you?
Um, it was very interesting. It was pretty quiet. It was I was pretty young when I, started to understand gangs, and I knew that Jeffrey Manor was like one gang. My mother really didn't let me go outside. She only used to let me go outside if I was with my neighbor from across the street, and he was a boy, so only time I could go outside is if I was with him. But going outside with him, just being able to go to the park and do little things like that, I started to meet people, and I started to know, what gangs were. And I remember I was at the park one day and this guy walked past and he had a red hat broke off to the left. I'll never forget. I
Mm.
was a little girl.
And you just knew that was different. That doesn't look like what's going on in our neighborhood.
Everything stopped. The basketball game stopped. Everything stopped. And dude just took off running. It was just like,
Hmm.
so at a very, very young age, I knew what gangs were. I knew what the GDs were. I knew what, throwing up the forks
Throwing
and
up the rakes,
like
everybody was,
all that. Like I knew all that at a young age. And so it was just, very interesting because, I had friends from different parts of the city, from the west side, but I always was very focused like on school. And the people around me were like, yeah, Danielle, like you don't want to be out here.
yeah,
Like,
that's real.
like
You
that
had
was
good people around you.
I
Yeah.
had good people, like even though they was out there doing whatever they was doing,
They
they
cared
was
enough
like,
about
this ain't
you.
for you. Right. This
Yeah.
ain't for you. You
Go to
go to school.
school.
You go to school.
You know,
That's all you need to do.
he from a different era when it
Yeah.
was like, nah, bro, you play sports.
Yeah.
These niggas ain't doing shit. They with us. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's kind of like they knew their potential and they knew our potential.
Yeah.
And it's like, you good.
Yeah.
Keep it moving. Like
Right.
you one of the guys. Yeah. Go that way. Like, you
Yeah.
know, and kudos to that because now they don't have that.
Yeah,
Now
they don't. They don't have that now.
or now it's oh, they go Danielle. She walked past our block to go to school. We can't get them. When Shorty come this way,
Right.
we go
Yeah.
get we go get the
Right.
school girl because they
And
care about her.
because they're
'Cause
right. And like that's such like I caught the bus from Jeffrey Manor to Whitney Young every day.
'cause I was about to ask what high school you go to, like, because I'm like, you don't seem like you went to CVS. You said
Yeah.
you ain't give me no CVS, no East
Yeah,
Side
no.
vibes.
I
Not
went to
saying there's nothing wrong with CVS, but you know,
yeah, for sure. I caught the bus on the other side of town in the train every day, and
mhm.
like I never had a problem.
You've seen all different sides, all different
All
neighborhoods,
different
all
sides,
different
all
guys.
everything. I had friends, that was vice lords that I went to
Mhm.
school, people from out west, all that. Never had. I couldn't imagine, having to navigate and just constantly be, head on a swivel,
Yeah,
about my safety, just getting back and forth like that. That
that would
alone,
cause you the mental illness alone.
exactly. And I mean, and it's life and death
Yeah,
to get caught on the bus. I saw people plenty of times we got caught on the bus. People got to fighting. People from Crane used to come up to
mhm.
our school.
You know,
All that, but it's life and death. Like they was fighting. They shoot it now.
yeah,
They
they
kill,
shoot now. You might get jumped on. You might end up with a broken arm or a black eye.
right.
You know,
Somebody might steal your book bag or
but
your,
you'll
but
be
you
all
ain't
right.
coming home though.
You'll be all right. You
You'll
might
be all
walk with a limp for a day or two. Might hurt to sit down, but at least you're still feeling stuff.
yeah.
You know, so that's unfortunate. But I'm thank you for stopping by. We got 4 minutes left. We were just having so much fun. We got to do a part two. We got to
For
do a part
sure.
two for
For
sure,
sure.
for sure.
Always,
But
yeah.
before we go, tell us about the project and what you had to play a part in.
Yeah, so there is a documentary that is going to be released in the fall of this year. and the name of it is called As We Speak. And As We Speak is based loosely around the book Rap on Trial. And really, the focus is to look at the use of rap lyrics in the criminal justice system. And the director was particularly influenced to, move forward with the project as we look at the RICO case with Young Thug and YSL. And, he went across the country to different states that have a heavy rap influence and just spoke, with people. And he ended up, wanting to focus on Chicago and really wanted to highlight drill music in Chicago. And he ended up reading my dissertation. So he did reach out to me, and I'm happy to say that I am participating in, the representation from Chicago, along with some other, great Chicago rap artists, some other people that are, involved in music here in Chicago. And I was just very happy and very honored to be able to lend a voice to, give a voice to the streets.
Yeah,
We gotta bridge the gap. And so, really that kind of community research level understanding, you know, really connecting with the street audience to highlight their voices. And so I was very honored, and I really hope that, I was able to shed some light and just give a voice to what's, happening in Chicago.
yeah. I'm so proud of you. For sure, Danny, for sure. I keep calling you Danny. I feel like I know you.
That's cool.
For
That's all
sure. For sure.
right.
They call you Danny?
Yes.
For sure. I got a cousin named Danielle. We call her Danny. For sure.
Yeah.
So, I love your energy. I love your vibes. I love what you're doing for our culture, what you represent, how you doing it, not just for the women, not just for the black women, but the black Chicago women. Let them know that we doing more than twerking and shooting guns. We actually going to school, getting doctorates. So kudos for you. Kudos to being an example. Nothing but success. I know everything you do is gonna be blessed and prosperous. Next time we're going to the giveaways, we go do some collab because you do giveaways, I do giveaways. Let's do something this summer.
For
Let's,
sure.
let's work
I'm
on it.
all
For
about
sure.
that. I'm all about that. And thank you so much for inviting me to participate. Again, my condolences to you for your co-host. And I just really appreciate what you're doing. These types of conversations are what it's going to take, to continue throwing pebbles to really get to, evolving into where we want to be in the future. And so I just appreciate you having me on and connecting with your audience. And I definitely look forward to doing some more stuff in the future.
Oh yeah, we definitely will. You have a blessed and prosperous day. I'm gonna hit you up in a minute. All right.
All right. Take care.
You too. Peace.
Bye.
All right, y'all. G Talk 2020 podcast. We are back. Tony G, Tone Diesel. You know the vibes. G Talk 2020. We back. Salute.